Looks like Hunter Biden really blew it with cocaine traces all over that gun he illegally possessed. We'll give you the details on that and what the DOJ knew about the laptop, when they knew it, and what they refused to say during the 2020 presidential election. Plus, Donald Trump gets an unlikely endorsement from Justin Trudeau. Well, sort of. We'll explain that to you. And, we're often told that we have nothing nice to say about Democrats. Well, we've got something very nice to say about a certain Democrat congressperson from the Bronx. And it ain't AOC, but we're sincere. Richie Torres had something great to say, and we'll show it to you coming up in just a moment. Let's go. We're live. Let's go now. Let's just go. It's Larry O'Connor here on Town Hall Media, all across the Town Hall sites, townhall.com, Hot Air, PJ Media, Red State, Twitchy, and Bearing Arms, and of course on all the social media platforms for Town Hall Media. Like us, subscribe to us, get your notifications going so you can know exactly when we're going live, please. My name's Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry. Miranda Devine is the journalist from the New York Post who should have won a Pulitzer Prize for her incredible investigative work on the Hunter Biden laptop. Instead of winning a Pulitzer Prize, instead, Miranda Devine was called a Russian asset, a propagandist, a tool of Vladimir Putin's propaganda machine. And her story was censored not only on social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook, but also anybody who shared that story was also censored, in some cases blocked, and even their accounts were suspended from those social media platforms. And of course, all the broadcast networks, the cable networks, other news outlets, they refused to even report on the story that she broke until years later. Why? Well, because the story showed the corruption of Hunter Biden, the son of Joe Biden, and the story broke just a few weeks before the 2020 presidential election. And all those defenders of free speech and a free press, well, they had an election to win. So Miranda Devine had to be silenced. Well, let's go to Miranda Devine's Twitter feed right now, because she unfolded yesterday some incredible findings in a Justice Department filing in the Hunter Biden affair. Let's start with this piece of evidence. The Justice Department showed specifically that they found traces of cocaine in the pouch where Hunter Biden kept that gun that he illegally obtained. By the way, just to remind everybody, Hunter Biden, the son of the President of the United States, is a crackhead whoremonger and corrupt operator who is right now under multiple criminal investigations. Now, that was true in October of 2020 when this story first broke. But if we said that at the time, we would be silenced. We would be ostracized. Our stories would be demonetized and deplatformed. Well, because at that time, they really, really needed Donald Trump to lose the presidential election. Right now, it's January of 2024. We're still 11 months away from the election, or 10 months away. So apparently it's okay for us to say it for now. Here's the court filing that specifically says, and the important line is underlined, to be clear, investigators literally found drugs on the pouch where the defendant had kept his gun. Investigators found drugs on the pouch where Hunter Biden kept his gun. And the Justice Department and David Weiss, the man who is now supposedly the special investigator into the Hunter Biden affair, David Weiss and the Justice Department was this close away from handing Hunter Biden a sweetheart deal where he wouldn't have any prison time, where he could plea out and have full immunity from any other charges. In July, they were this close from that. Now, we'll get to that aspect of it in just a moment, but let's go all the way back to the beginning of Miranda Devine's breakdown here from yesterday, because that's just scratching the surface. The cocaine part of this is just scratching the surface. Miranda Devine writes, in a new court filing today, the Justice Department confirms Hunter Biden's laptop is real, that he left it at a computer store, and that the contents matched what they obtained from a search warrant of his cloud. Now, let's pause there for a second, because this is blockbuster. Miranda Devine's story about the Hunter Biden laptop specifically had to do with her possession of, through a source, a possession of the hard drive that had been handed over to a computer repair shop, right? We know that story. Hunter Biden dropped off his laptop to a computer repair store in Delaware, never came back to pick it up, never paid for the repairs, by the way. The owner of that store turned the laptop over to the FBI, but first made a mirror copy of the drive just in case the FBI didn't do anything with it. And months later, since the FBI didn't do anything with it, that source, that whistleblower that owned the store in Delaware, he handed it over. Eventually, he handed it over to Rudy Giuliani, and it ended up in the hands of the New York Post and Miranda Devine. It was that hard drive that became the genesis of the New York Post story in October that would have absolutely upended the presidential election. It would have handed Joe Biden defeat that he deserved, because that laptop had all of the evidence right now, the emails that showed that he was the big guy and he was getting a cut of the money that Hunter Biden was making with Ukraine interests and Russian interests and Kazakhstan interests and Chinese interests. That's what Miranda Devine's story was. Understand something. The Justice Department already had all that information. Let me read this line again. The DOJ confirms Hunter Biden's laptop is real. He left it at a computer store, and the contents match what they obtained from a search warrant of his iCloud. You see, the Justice Department, already investigating Hunter Biden, had a search warrant for all of his emails that were kept on the cloud. When they got the actual laptop, all they did was compare it to the information they already had obtained through a search warrant, and they confirmed that it was legit. Why is that important? It's important for multiple reasons. The first and most important was that Hunter Biden was so corrupt and so obviously involved in illegal activities that well before they even had the laptop from this whistleblower from the Apple store, the DOJ, the FBI, they had already obtained this information because they were hot in his trail in 2019. But secondly, and frankly, I think most importantly, when it came time for the presidential election and this story broke, and the Biden campaign trotted out 50 former intelligence community officials to swear up and down that this thing wasn't real. This laptop was a fraud. This laptop was just a product of propaganda from Vladimir Putin and the Russians. The DOJ knew that that was a lie. They knew that this wasn't a product of Russian propagandists. They knew the Hunter Biden laptop was not Russian interference, and they said nothing. They shut their mouths. They let this entire thing play out. They let the New York Post get censored and deleted. They let the First Amendment be squashed and put through a shredder by the Justice Department, by the FBI. Don't forget, it was members of the FBI who worked with Twitter at the time to censor accounts that were sharing this laptop story. Even though the FBI and the Justice Department knew at that very moment that it was real, that it was legit, and it wasn't Russian interference. And yet they said nothing. They said nothing. While Miranda Devine's rights were infringed, the New York Post rights were infringed, but most importantly, your rights, your First Amendment rights. Because understand something. When you shared the story from the New York Post, you were censored. Your account was blocked. And sometimes you were suspended from these social media platforms. But there's another level to the First Amendment. See, the First Amendment, when Alexander Hamilton and James Madison and the Constitutional Convention back in the 1780s when they were crafting the Bill of Rights, when they were coming up with the First Amendment and the freedom of speech and freedom of the press, it wasn't for reporters. Can I say that again? Freedom of the press isn't about protecting reporters. It's about protecting you. It's not about reporters having the right to report. It's about you, the American citizen, having the right to unfettered information. Alexander Hamilton and James Madison and George Washington and the entire Continental Congress, when they were contemplating the Constitution and when they put forth the Bill of Rights, it wasn't about protecting Jim Acosta's rights. It was about you, the American citizen, having a free, unfettered access to news and information without the government intervening and censoring it and silencing and deciding what information you're allowed to have and what information you're not allowed to have. When the FBI and the Justice Department stood by quietly as this story was kept from you, they were infringing on your First Amendment rights. And let's not forget this incredibly important moment during the presidential debate when Donald Trump raised this issue to the American people.
50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plant. They have said that this has all the five former heads of the CIA, both parties say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage.
This is classic Trump. We have 4 days left, and all of a sudden there's a laptop. There's overwhelming evidence that from the intelligence community that the Russians are engaged.
I still think that the stories from the fall about your son Hunter were Russian disinformation at a smear campaign, like you said.
Yes.
I know you'd asked it. I have no response. It's another smear campaign. It's the last-ditch effort in this desperate campaign to smear me and my family. The vast majority of the intelligence people have come out and said there's no basis at all.
Yeah, no basis at all. It's a lie. It's all Russian disinformation. Classic Trump. This is what he does. He doesn't just lie and do Oppo research, but he's in the back pocket of Vladimir Putin and the Russians. That's what Joe Biden said to deflect against this story and win your vote. And it worked. And the FBI and the Justice Department now, based on this court filing, they knew. They knew and they said nothing. In fact, frankly, they actively covered up the truth. Your FBI, your Justice Department actively covered up the truth because they worked on a daily basis with meetings with executives at Twitter to flag problematic posts on that platform, and Twitter dutifully saluted and deleted those posts and suspended the accounts. So let's go back to Miranda Devine here. As she says, don't hold your breath for a retraction from Joe Biden. It's a Russian plant. The Dirty 51, that would be the 51 former members of the intelligence community who claimed this was a Russian plant, or myriad dishonest media operatives. They blamed Russia, and the Bidens knew it was Hunter. So did the FBI. Hunter also blamed Russia when he was caught using adultery site Ashley Madison. All right, so here's the actual court filing. And again, this is the Justice Department filing this filing this document in open court. Investigators later came into possession of the defendant's Apple MacBook Pro, which he had left at a computer store. Search warrant was also obtained for his laptop, and the results of the search were largely duplicative of information investigators had already obtained. So in other words, to them, the laptop was not actually a big breaking revelation because they already obtained this information from Apple via a search warrant. They knew all along, and they lied, and they covered it up. Miranda Devine continues. Special counsel David Weiss's prosecutor, Leo Wise, has been busy with multiple filings, including new evidence about the alleged illegal gun purchase while addicted to crack cocaine, in which he is being prosecuted in Delaware after his sweetheart plea deal fell apart. Now, that's where we found the evidence that there was cocaine in the pouch where he kept this gun. Now, they obtained the trace amounts of cocaine the FBI did after unsealing this evidence. The gun was sealed up for evidence in 2018. That's how far back this goes. In 2018, Hunter Biden was high on crack. This is a year before his dad announces he's running for president. And he was high on crack and obtained a gun illegally, lied on the federal form to obtain that gun illegally. The cops get the gun, they seal it. Last year in 2023, the investigators got that evidence, unsealed it, and found the traces of cocaine. And the Justice Department was still ready to give him a sweetheart deal. Give him a deal that you would have never gotten for illegally obtaining a gun while on crack. And by the way, not for nothing, every time there's a tragic gun crime in this country, Joe Biden and his party and the media immediately jump up and down and scream that they want more gun laws, more gun laws, more gun laws. And many of us sit back and say the only people who follow gun laws are law-abiding citizens. I mean, maybe it's me, but generally speaking, if somebody is willing to break the law that is already on the books against, murder or assault with a deadly weapon or armed robbery, if you're already willing to break the law pertaining to utilizing a gun in a criminal fashion, you're probably willing to break a law against obtaining that gun in the first place. I don't know, like, the law against obtaining a gun if you're addicted to crack cocaine. But Joe Biden, he's the first one as a senator for 120 years, jumping up there saying, we need more gun laws to get these guns out of the hands of criminals. Dude, the criminal's in your own home right now. It's your son. And he broke that law and lied on the form. And of course, everybody knows it. All right, Miranda Devine continues. More evidence presented by the DOJ. On October 13th, 2018 and October 14th, 2018, the day after and 2 days after he purchased the firearm, Hunter said in a text message that he was meeting a drug dealer and sleeping in a car smoking crack. They had this evidence. They had the trace amounts of cocaine in the pouch where he kept his gun. They had text messages that he sent saying that he was meeting with a drug dealer and sleeping in a car smoking crack the day after and 2 days after he obtained this gun. And yet here we are, 2024, and this guy still hasn't gone to jail for illegal possession of a firearm. And again, the investigators, what we started with here, literally found drugs on the pouch where the defendant had kept his gun. Also, Leo Wise, the prosecutor now, who is taking up the case after they were willing to give him walking papers back in July, summarizes the allegations against Hunter Biden for lying on a gun purchase form when he was addicted to crack cocaine. It's all in these court filings. And Miranda Devine finishes here properly by giving credit to the whistleblowers. None of this would have come to light. The plea deal would have gone through. Hunter Biden would have had immunity July of last year, and the Oversight Committee would have had nothing to work with now with Hunter Biden if it weren't for Gary Shapley and Joseph Ziegler. They were IRS whistleblowers. They blew the whistle. No one from the FBI has blown the whistle on this. No one from the Justice Department has blown the whistle. There is a clear and palpable cover-up and obstruction of justice at the highest levels of this government, of this Biden administration. And the only people brave enough to step forward and say, yeah, this is wrong, are these two men, Gary Shapley and Joseph Ziegler for the IRS. If they hadn't courageously stepped forward, Hunter Biden would be 100% free with immunity today. With immunity. That's a huge story. And again, I want to praise Miranda Devine, who, as I mentioned, deserves the Pulitzer Prize. But honestly, at this point, if the Pulitzer Committee came and said, hey, Miranda, we want to give it to you, knowing her, she'd probably say, screw you people. Because as long as you continue to give Pulitzer Prizes to the Washington Post and CNN for Russian collusion stories, I don't want to be a part of that club. God bless you, Miranda Devine, and the New York Post for great reporting, real reporting. the kind of reporting James Madison and Alexander Hamilton had in mind when they helped craft that First Amendment. All right, that story is still developing, by the way. Hunter Biden hopefully will be behind bars before this upcoming presidential election. Took many years, but it looks like the truth is finally coming out. All right, meanwhile, we have a breaking story out of New York. This just broke about 30 minutes ago. New York judge will not dismiss the charges against U.S. Marine veteran Daniel Penny. This is the so-called subway chokehold death case where he is being prosecuted for murder, for second-degree murder, for subduing what will be called a street performer on the subway. Let's get to the details here from NBC in New York. Judge denied the motion by attorneys for Daniel Penny, who placed Jordan Neely in a chokehold aboard a New York City subway last year, to dismiss the case. The decision came in court today, Wednesday. Judge ordered Penny back to court in late March. His trial is tentatively expected to start in the fall. Penny's attorney did not comment after the hearing. Penny has pleaded not guilty to second-degree manslaughter, correct the record. It's second-degree manslaughter, not second-degree murder. There is a distinction there. Criminally negligent homicide in the May 1st death of Neely, a former Michael Jackson impersonator who was shouting and begging for money on the Manhattan train, according to witnesses. Penny pinned him to the ground with the help of two other passengers and held him in a chokehold for more than 3 minutes. Neely, 30, lost consciousness during the struggle. Chokehold death, which was caught on bystander video, prompted fierce debate, with some praising Penny as a good Samaritan and others accusing him of racist vigilantism. Penny is white and Neely was black. We're not going to show you the video in question for various reasons, but you do remember this case. The fact that NBC4 had to insert race into this in the 5th paragraph of their write-up is exactly what's wrong with this story. Daniel Penny riding the subway. You remember this case. This man, Jordan Neely, clearly mentally unstable, quite possibly, from the results of various issues in his life, as well as reports of drug use in his past. Frankly, intimidating, bullying, and getting in the face and threatening violence against bystanders, innocent people who were just trying to live their life on the New York subway. It's hard enough to live in New York on a daily basis. It's hard enough to go from home to work on mass transit in New York with the smells and the noise and the have you ever been on a subway in New York? It's not always a pleasant experience, but most people in New York don't have a choice. And so there they are, just trying to get to work or trying to get home. And now this guy is in their face, bullying them, intimidating them, demanding money. People asked for help. And this man, he could have minded his own business. He could have walked away. He could have done what so many New Yorkers sadly these days do, which is not get involved. But the man is a veteran of the United States Marine Corps. And he still holds to his code. He still holds to the values and principles that the Marines instill into these young men. And so he helped out his fellow American citizen. He helped out his fellow New Yorker. And he subdued this guy. And for his efforts, he's now defending himself in open court. He's the one who has to defend himself against manslaughter charges. Because he lives in a city where the elected officials and the prosecutors, and sadly, the cops who have taken their orders from the elected officials and the prosecutors, won't do anything to protect the citizens of that city. The lunatics are literally running the asylum in New York. And Jordan Neely and the other people on that train had enough. There is no witnesses that have come forward saying that Neely acted in a racist manner, that he was out of line. People were grateful after this incident happened. But it got immediately politicized and racialized by elected officials who called Jordan Neely this, this beloved street performer. The beloved street performer was bullying and harassing and demanding money from people. And And Daniel Penny is now fighting for his life because of it. And, this curtails perfectly, dovetails perfectly with the Hunter Biden story, because the Hunter Biden story is entirely about two rules in our society, the two-tiered justice system in our society. And we see it perfectly in this side-by-side comparison here with Daniel Penny and Jordan Neely. Jordan Neely was celebrated as a beloved street performer. Jordan Neely was allowed to harass his fellow citizens on a daily basis until he threatened violence, and Daniel Penny stepped up and protected his fellow citizens. And now he has to fight for his life in open court. It's a sad day in New York, but sadly indicative of exactly what's going on every single day in this country. Every single day in major cities, especially cities that are run by Democrats and who have prosecutors who have been propped up by George Soros. That's the same thing in Manhattan. They're prosecuting this guy and trying to make racial divisions in our country when we don't need it, and injecting race into this. But if this street performer, so-called, was white, do we think the story would have ended any differently? And by the way, if Daniel Penny were black, do you think they'd prosecute him? I doubt it. I doubt it. It's disgusting. All right. Meanwhile, yesterday we told you about Vivek Ramaswamy, who, after the Iowa caucus Monday, announced he was suspending his campaign and endorsed Donald Trump for president. And he didn't waste any time. Less than 24 hours later, he was right there in New Hampshire, and he was campaigning for Donald Trump. And what was interesting about his speech is that he did what Vivek Ramaswamy has been doing every day of this campaign, which is blasting through the media narrative and the narrative of the left. What was disconcerting is what Fox News did in the middle of this speech. Watch.
We believe those ideals still exist. This man is going to be your next president to revive them. E pluribus unum. From many, one. And you know how we're doing it? We're doing it by speaking the truth at every step of the way. There are two genders in this country. Period. That is the truth. Fossil fuels are a requirement for human prosperity. Drill, frack, burn coal, embrace nuclear energy. Reverse racism is racism. An open border is not a border. Parents determine the education of their children. The nuclear family is the greatest form of governance known to mankind. Capitalism lifts us up from poverty. There are 3 branches of government in the United States, not 4. And the U.S. Constitution is the strongest and greatest guarantor of freedom in human history. That is the truth. We fight for the truth.
Joining us now is Ari.
All right, so there you saw. I mean, he's right in the middle of it. He's like laying it out there. He's going after the wokeisms. There's only 2 genders. He's blowing apart all of the racial politics that are trying to divide us. And Fox News decides it's not Laura Ingram's fault. I don't have a personal beef with it, but they pull away. I don't understand this mentality. You think that Vivek Ramaswamy giving a speech live in New Hampshire, endorsing Donald Trump with Trump on the stage with him, is newsworthy enough to go to the speech live, and then suddenly in the middle of it, you cut away? Why? Why do you do that? But see, here's what's interesting. Our pal Benny Johnson tweeted out that clip late last night on X, saying Fox News cuts away as Vivek drops truth bombs. And that post from Benny Johnson then got reposted by hip-hop artist, rapper Meek Mill. Meek Mill, who has over 11 million followers on X. Meek Mill, again, a rapper, reposted Benny Johnson and said, wait till you all see who the black people in poverty are voting for. You see, there is something happening out there with black voters in this country. That's why you saw the meltdown on MSNBC Monday night after the Iowa caucus. It's why you see Joy Reid reflexively playing the race card at every opportunity. It's why you see the Democrats trying to divide us along racial lines. God knows Joe Biden is going to do it in the campaign because, well, that's what he's done his entire career, divide people for his own political gain. It's not like he's got a track record he can run on. They see the numbers. They see what's happening. And so does Meek Mill. Would you have bet that rapper Meek Mill would endorse Donald Trump this year? With everything that we've heard about race, that Donald Trump is Hitler, that Donald Trump is racist, that Donald Trump... But the reality of the situation is, specifically, as he says, wait till y'all see who the black people in poverty are voting for. Because the reality is, every American, regardless of their skin color, knows exactly what the last 3 years have been like and what the 4 years before it were like. And the fact that I think it's remarkable that he reposted this specific video from Benny Johnson, showing that Fox News pulled away from Vivek Ramaswamy as he was shining a light on the exact issues that black voters and other voters of color are focusing on right now. In fact, Meek Mill did another post. This time, our friend Greg, how come it's always our pals who are getting reposted by this rapper, by Meek Mill? Greg Price put out this tweet. 2 days ago, Biden told reporters, I've already delivered the message to Iran. They know not to do anything, right? I think we played this video yesterday.
I've already delivered the message to Iran. They know not to do anything.
Yeah, they know not to do anything. And of course, that happened. And then, 36 hours later, Iran claimed responsibility for an attack in Erbil targeting the U.S. consulate and the airport. All right. So Greg Price tweets that video out and says 2 days ago, right. And then Meek Mill reposts Greg. Did we know that Greg Price was that big in the hip hop community, by the way? Is this something that we should know about? I mean, what does he do? Has Greg Price ever listened to a rap song in his life? He's like more of he's like the country stuff, doesn't he? I mean, I've hung out with Greg. Trust me, he's not a Meek Mill. No offense, Meek. I don't want to get him in trouble. Anyway, Meek Mill. I've been listening to Meek Mill for years. Anyway, Meek Mill takes Greg Price's post and says, Joe Biden is too old to be our president, respectfully. What is going on in American system that y'all pushing this through like it's okay to trust what we're seeing? We're taking missiles, advanced technology, mental and physical warfare. That's not a lane for the older. In other words, he can't handle what's going on. Joe Biden can't. And here's Meek Mill basically saying what everybody can recognize, obviously, before our very eyes. But they're going to keep pushing Joe Biden on voters, and they're going to declare to them that you got to reelect the whitest man in America, Joe Biden, because he's the only one that's going to save you from the racist to Donald Trump and the racist Republican Party, the white supremacists out there. You hear it right now. But Meek Mill, he can see through it. And when he puts something like this out to his, I'll repeat, 11.3 million followers, that makes a difference. The Democrats can't rely on the same kind of cultural divisions that they've relied on in the past. So that's an incredible endorsement of sorts for Donald Trump, isn't it? But it's not the most extraordinary. Imagine this. The endorsement of rapper Meek Mill for Donald Trump yesterday is not the most extraordinary endorsement that Donald Trump got. No, this one, I doubt he saw it coming. He got an endorsement of sorts from Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Here's how Reuters wrote it up. According to Prime Minister Trudeau, another Trump presidency will not be easy for Canada. That's right. If Republican frontrunner Donald Trump wins the U.S. presidential election in November, it will be a step back that makes life tough for Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said on Tuesday. Trudeau, whose center-left Liberals came to power in November 2015, had rocky relations with Trump during his first four-year House term. In 2018, Trump accused Trudeau of being weak and dishonest. Well, it wasn't easy the first time, and if there is a second time, it won't be easy either, Trudeau said in French during a discussion hosted by the Montreal Chamber of Commerce. Now, maybe it's me, but when you're on the wrong side of Justin Trudeau, that's an endorsement. I mean, I hope Trump uses this. Joe Biden is Justin Trudeau's pick for president because Joe Biden will make America Canada again. How bad is it up in Canada? Here's a viral video from an influencer up there that tells you exactly what you need to know.
Hi, I'm Canadian, where we're trying to make it almost impossible to get any kind of vitamins or supplementation, but it's totally legal to have up to 2.5 grams of heroin or methamphetamine. Hey, I'm Canadian, where if you disagree with our political views, we'll call you a white supremacist, freeze your bank accounts, and beat you with horses in the street. Hey, I'm Canadian, and we don't like opposing views here, so you actually can't even watch independent news media on social media platforms, and we're about to take down podcasts and even Netflix shows that the government doesn't like. Yes!
I don't know if this is really what the Canadian Tourist Bureau is looking for, but it works for me. Hey, welcome to Canada.
Hi, I'm Canadian, where it's way easier to get medically assisted suicide than an MRI or psychotherapy. Hi, I'm Canadian. It's really cold here. We have some of the coldest winters, which is why we are pursuing net zero, because we actually use fossil fuels to heat our homes, and we don't have alternative ways of heating our houses. That work? Hi, I'm a Canadian, and if you're a journalist that even thinks about interviewing one of our high-ranking officials, you'll go to prison.
Yeah, that's Canada for you. That's Justin Trudeau's Canada, and he's on the other side of the political equation of Donald Trump. So what better endorsement for Donald Trump are you going to find? But for those of you who are worried about Canada, and all of that is true, and all of that is documented, that is exactly what's going on in Canada right now. If you're worried about them, and you should be, there is hope. I want to remind you, there is hope with the leading conservative candidate for prime minister, Pierre Poilievre. What is it again, Kevin? I just refuse to get this right.
Poilievre.
Pierre Poilievre. Did you just get an American name? Oh, he's Canadian. All right, that's fair. Pierre Poilievre, whose videos are fantastic. We love them. We featured them here several times. He was engaged in a press conference again, and this time he highlighted exactly how hypocritical and deceitful the Trudeau government is with regard to their relationship with Israel. Now, Trudeau is in the same position that Biden is here in America, where the power center of his left-wing government is actually embracing the Hamas terrorists. And they think that the bad guys in this whole equation are the people who just had over 1,000 murders take place and rapes and kidnappings and hostages. That would be the Israelis. They're the bad guys, according to the left-wing political force in Canada as well as here in America. So Pierre Poilievre called him out in a beautiful way, like he always does.
First of all, let me point out the incredible, sinister, and hypocritical doublespeak of Justin Trudeau. He sends out some of his MPs to claim that they support calling Israel genocidal when they're talking to one group of voters. And then he sends out another group to say that they're against calling Israel genocidal. This is the cynical liberal strategy to say one thing to one group of voters and an entirely different thing to another group of voters, while Trudeau and Freeland say nothing at all, trying to have it both ways. If you're out there on either side of this debate on the Middle East, know that Justin Trudeau is lying to you. He's telling you whatever you want to hear, and then he's going to another group and saying exactly the opposite. I won't be doing that. I'll take a clear stand based on moral clarity. So let's address this allegation against Israel. I find it incredible that these countries have not accused Hamas of genocide when it's in Hamas's charter that they want to commit genocide against Israel. We don't even need to accuse Hamas because they admit that they are a genocidal enterprise. They admit that their October 7th attacks were motivated by genocidal aims. They are backed by the Iranian government, which seeks to annihilate the entire Jewish people. And not to mention that, if we want to go after genocide targeting Muslims, why are they not bringing a case against China for its persecution of the Uyghur Muslims who are in concentration camps in that country? Why are they not going after Bashar al-Assad, who's been carrying out a genocide against Sunni Muslims in that country? Of course, because this is not about genocide, it is about shamelessly and dishonestly attacking the Jewish people and the Jewish state, and the Conservative Party stands against this dishonest approach.
You see, all is not lost in Canada. All is not lost for our Canuck friends. All is not lost for the Great White North. They have a chance. They could get reasonable leadership that makes sense and actually stands for honesty and truth and freedom and morality. Pierre Poilievre, I promise to always get his name right if he becomes prime minister. And who knows? I mean, they could do the right thing, elect him, and the next thing you know, Canada might even make it to a Stanley Cup finals. I mean, they're not going to win it, but they can make it to the finals. But what you just heard Pierre Poilievre say about the left-wing Liberal Party in Canada, sadly, is 100% the same here in America with regard to the Democrats. Joe Biden does the exact same thing. He keeps his mouth shut. He lets the pro-Hamas side of his party have a stronghold on college campuses, in the streets of the city. He didn't say anything against those protests where they were trying to break down the fence outside the White House. Have you seen him say anything about those people? No. And of course, members of his own party like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, they get great coverage opposing Israel and supporting the terrorists. And nobody says anything about it. Certainly not Joe Biden. Nobody except for one person, at least, that we've seen. No Democrat has been as eloquent as Representative Richie Torres from the Bronx. And I say the Bronx in particular because his district is adjacent to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. They basically represent the same area and the same people. They're both Democrats, but the difference in what they have had to say about Hamas and Israel, it's night and day. We get accused of being too partisan here, that we never have anything nice to say about Democrats. Well, mark this down. Richie Torres, I disagree with Richie Torres. Democrat, member of the House of Representatives, probably on a whole lot of policy things. But God bless him and huge praise for him about what he had to say here at a church honoring Martin Luther King Day. Watch.
It's an honor to be here to offer a few reflections on Dr. King and the moral crisis that we're facing.
Give me, I said a church, and to be specific, this is looks as though it's a synagogue. I'm sorry. I didn't suggest that it was a Christian house of worship. It is a synagogue.
In a post-October 7th world. Like all of you, I was profoundly shaken, not only by October 7th, but by the aftermath. I found it utterly horrifying to see fellow Americans openly cheering and celebrating the deadliest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. And for me, the aftermath of October 7th revealed a barbarity of the American heart that reminded me of an earlier and darker time in our nation's history, a time when the public mobs of Jim Crow would openly celebrate the lynching of African Americans or the lynching of a Jewish American like Leo Frank. And so words cannot express the overwhelming outrage that I felt at the barbaric reaction to the barbarism of October 7th. People often ask me, why do you care so deeply? Why do you speak out so frequently and forcefully against anti-Semitism? And I simply reply, you are asking the wrong question. The question is not, why have I chosen to be outspoken? The question is, why have others chosen to be silent amid the deadliest day for Jews since the Holocaust? Dr. King once said that history will record that the greatest tragedy is not the strident clamor of the bad people, but it's the appalling silence of the good people. Elie Wiesel once said that the opposite of love is not hate, it is indifference. And what we've seen in the aftermath of October 7th is appalling silence and indifference and cowardice from so-called leaders in our society, from institutions that we once respected and admired. And if we as a society cannot bring ourselves to condemn the murder of innocents with moral clarity, then we must ask, what are we becoming as a society?
This video goes on for another several minutes, and I implore you to take a look at it and watch it in its entirety. And I want to point out here that that last passage right there, he's talking about his own colleagues. He's talking about his neighboring congresswoman, his sister there in the House of Representatives, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. He's talking about Ilhan Omar. Frankly, he's talking about the leadership of his party. He's talking about the president of the United States. He won't name them. He won't call them out. It's understandable. But what he said there and what he continues to say, this incredibly powerful and eloquent speech, why is it so hard? Why is it so hard for Joe Biden to say exactly the same thing? I mean, other than the fact that he has mashed potato for brains. He could put out a written statement. Why is it hard for Karine Jean-Pierre, the spokesperson, who I believe is supposed to be more eloquent than the president? Why is it so hard for her to say it? Why is it so hard for Kamala Harris to say it? Why is it so hard to say exactly what he's saying, to call good, good, and evil, evil, to call the victims of a massacre the actual victims and the perpetrators of the massacre the evildoers? Why is that hard for today's Democratic Party? Why is he a unicorn here for the Democrats? And, well, sadly, there's only two possible answers. The first is political cowardice, because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and all the other people I just mentioned are terrified to lose financial and electoral support from people within their party who would disagree with that sentiment. Or, frankly, even more upsetting, that those people I just mentioned don't actually agree with what Congressman Torres said here. That those people, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, that they actually do truly believe that Israel, the victim of the terror attacks of October 7th, that they are, in fact, the bad guys in this scenario. Good on you, Representative Richie Torres. Congratulations. Great job. Well done. Now, tomorrow, we'll be criticizing you again because you're wrong on so many other political issues. But good job today. And good job for you for getting through another show with us. I appreciate you watching. Don't forget to like this and share it and subscribe it and get alerts and all that jazz. And later on, by the way, at YouTube, we break out a lot of segments here individually. So come on back and visit. If you liked one of our segments in particular today, go ahead and share that on your social media and like it and all that jazz as well. Right? Right. Thanks for joining us here today. I'm Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry.